Hello and welcome to Red. Today I have a video where I wanted to talk about my 10 literary goals. Now this video is completely inspired, if not outright derivative, of Strange Lucidity's video of the same name. I'm going to, here's a picture of the video, and also I'll have a link to her video in the description. I highly recommend checking her video out because she, to be honest, she has some pretty wild goals. I don't think there's going to be anything on this list that is going to be as sort of crazy as trying to memorize parts of Faust or reading Proust in the original French for someone who's not a native French speaker. Some of these goals are going to be a bit more accomplishable for mere mortals like myself, but I thought it could still be fun just to show you sort of what my aspirations are outside of just making kind of weekly YouTube videos and what I do in my day-to-day life, I suppose. The first one is actually related to language learning, and it's a bit of a humble goal, I will admit. I want to be able to read a book in Chinese, and the goal, like the benchmark for me, is if I can read this Roald Dahl Matilda book in Chinese. I picked up a bunch of these Roald Dahl books off the Facebook Marketplace, and so just some context for myself. I come from a country, Australia, but also B, a family where we don't speak any language other than English, and so there's not really any extrinsic influence or drive to kind of learn another language, and so any other language learning goals do have to be sort of intrinsic, and you have to be self-motivated, aside from the kind of pitiful learnings of French in high school for those of us in a public school who spent like 1 year learning French with a teacher who was obviously just learning the material the night before, which that's sort of how it goes. Chinese is the first language that I've kind of really been like, all right, I think I can want to commit to getting to a basic conversational level. And in terms of reading literacy, for me the goal is just to be able to read a basic children's book, a Roald Dahl. I've also got BFG. I've got Fantastic Mr. Fox. I've got the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, which was just adapted by Wes Anderson. Kind of a humble goal, but for someone who really, for the first quarter century or midlife, has only spoken English, it's kind of my it's a goal for me that I'd like to be able to read this book in Chinese. My second goal is that I want to actually improve my handwriting, and so I don't hate my handwriting. It's quite small and it's quite terse. Here's an example. But the one thing that I want to work on and I want to improve is that I want to have really beautiful capital letters, and for me the just goal, the complete aspirational end goal is if I can have handwriting similar to Walt Whitman's. And here's a picture example of what Whitman's handwriting looks like. I just think it's so beautiful. I want to have nice calligraphic capital letters. That's sort of what I want to work on. But for the most part, I don't hate my handwriting anywhere near as much as I did when I was sort of writing when I was younger. Number 3, my third goal, is that I want to meet an author whose work I admire and am currently reading in the flesh. And that might not sound like the most insane goal, but again, consider that I'm in Australia and I don't actually believe I've read a book by an Australian author, and mostly because kind of whenever I look up Australian literary authors, a lot of the time they're older dudes who are probably already dead, and I just not sort of seeing a whole lot of contemporary names. I'm not saying that they're not there. I definitely am happy to get recommendations, but I just I'm not in touch with the contemporary Australian literature scene, and so if you have any recommendations, I'd love to know. Most of the authors that I read that are still alive are either American or English, and so if I were to meet them, I'd probably have to sort of go over there and then coincidentally find a time when they're doing a book signing or something like that. So Yeah, it's a bit of a big goal, but it's I feel like it's important, and I wanted to include it because it will be sort of getting in touch with and actually physically connecting with the literary scene, as opposed to just completely in abstract, just sort of reading the books and not necessarily imagining that the authors are living physical human beings. So yeah, number 3 is to just meet an author in the flesh whose work I admire. Number 4, a little bit inspired by Chris Vere at Leaf by Leaf, I want to learn a little bit of Latin. Not a whole lot, really just a couple hundred words, but the reason I want to learn a bit of Latin is just because honestly it's kind of fun when I'm looking through the dictionary and I'm seeing that, these words come from this origin, and I think it could be cool to just sort of dig through and try and eventually see some sort of extracts, or to see some sort of similarities or some patterns showing up whenever I go and look at other Romance languages. I don't really have a Roald Dahl style goal for what I think would be like a level of Latin fluency that I'd like, but really, yeah, just a couple of hundred words just to get a really basic idea, memorize a lot of the famous Latin phrases that show up and are used in English. That could be cool. I'd like to, maximum learn like 500 Latin words. That's sort of all I'm really interested in. Number 5, and so number 5 and number 6 are gonna kind of bleed into each other, but I'll say them in order. So last year, after having read the Bible and sort of realizing how good of a feeling it is to read like the really big foundational texts of a culture or a religion, I want to make it a goal that I go and pursue and read even more of these foundational texts for certain cultures. And so some others that I have listed here is that I want to read the unabridged Mahabharata, read the Rig Veda, read the Avatamsaka or the Flower Sutra. And if you have any others from cultures that I just have no idea about, please do let me know, because I want to kind of find out about I'm just now I'm so interested in reading and learning about these big sort of epic texts that were very foundational for a lot of cultures and religions. And so number 6, or leading into that, is I want to read a book from every country wherever it's possible or feasible. And I think I'm actually going to use Fiction Beast's videos as a good sort of guide, because he has a great series of videos like the top 10-50 books from Asia and so on, but it's not like he didn't choose like 15 books or 20 books from Japan. He chose 1 or 2 books from every country, and he goes in alphabetical order, and it's a really great video series, and he's done it for other countries as well. For like America and so on. But I think that's a goal as well. I'd like to just almost tick off and see how many books I can read from other countries. And I'll be honest, I haven't counted it up yet, but I have a strong suspicion that the amount of books I've read from countries is probably at or about 10 to 15 different countries. So pretty abysmal, and I definitely want to get a little bit more world aware in terms of my literature and not so confined to America. But I also really just love reading a lot of the American authors. So yeah. But those two, to read foundational texts and to read from every country, are sort of goals number 5 and 6. Goal number 7, this is something that I've made references to here and there, but I haven't really explicitly talked about it because, it's not finished yet. I do want to publish a short story collection. In 2023, I took a sabbatical from music, which is my sort of, it's what I studied. If I was going to go and do a master's, I'd do a master's in music as well. But I took a bit of a sabbatical to focus on reading and writing, and over the year I really got, I think, a kind of decent chunk of short story. These are all first and second drafts, and some stuff is still scattered around in notebooks, yet unfinished. But I'd like to publish a short story collection because that's sort of where my interests lie. And I don't know. I'm kind of tossing up between, do I self-publish it? I almost feel like that'd be a bit too much of a hassle, but it is also a kind of financial investment that I'd have to figure out if it's even feasible because of, there's minimum required if you were to kind of get a book printed from just a printing company, there's a minimum amount of requirements, and I don't know how I'd feel about just having 1,000 of my books lying around the house that I then need to kind of try and sell. So it'd probably be fun to do it, or more feasible for a first one to do it with a publisher. And yeah, that's just the kind of goal, is to get a nice collection of short stories that I feel comfortable and confident with publishing. And yeah, that's one of my writing or output related goals. Another one, this is a kind of fun one. I want to read enough books in a year that the pile is higher than my head. And so 2 years in a row I've gotten to about, my neck or my sternum, but I've never quite exceeded my physical height. And so I'm not, on the one hand, I do see the value and the wisdom when people say, don't worry about quantitative reading. You want to kind of focus and you want to actually read slowly and ingest everything that you're reading. And while I do think that's true, I think there's a chance that it's a little bit hypocritical of me, because I just am in a quantitative reading goal of my life, or reading period of my life. Like I said, I spent the first 23, 24 years of my life focused pretty exclusively on music, and I only started reading actively in 2020. And so I've not been a reader for my whole life. I only started reading in the last couple of years, and so I feel like I have a lot to catch up on. I have a lot of literary blind spots. So I will just admit that I am, for at least the next couple of years, going to be a very sort of quantity based reader, just because I do need to kind of catch up on a lot of things that I've been missing out on. But yeah, maybe one day I will just happen to read enough books that it is taller than me. This is another one. This is not exactly literature or literary related, but it's the only musical thing that I have or that I do that's kind of somewhat related to literature. A few years ago, I read Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, and it's a great book, of course, but one of the scenes that really stuck out in my memory, and I remembered it and it was quite impactful, is early on in the book when Raskolnikov is sick. He has a fever dream, and in the dream there's a very brutal scene with some townsfolk essentially violently murdering a horse, and I spent a long time just sort of digesting my feelings on that, and I realized that I kind of actually wanted to write some music that talked about or explored that. And I started writing a suite, the Fever Dream suite, which the prelude of it I actually ended up performing in my final recital, and that went really well. While I was on vacation in Berlin in 2020, I wrote some more of it, and just for a fun little teaser, here's some handwritten parts, or just a kind of master score of one of the sections. But yeah, it's just not finished, and so I need to kind of go through and actually finish it up. I think maybe 4 or 5 of the 6 or 7 movements have already been written, and I'd like to just kind of finish it up because I think it's pretty cool, and I like what I've written. But again, I just took a big sabbatical last year and didn't make, aside from making an album, I didn't really do any music related stuff. So now that I'm sort of back into practicing and I'm back into focusing on music, it could be a fun project to come around and finally finish. But yeah, to finish composing and record the Fever Dream suite. And the lucky last one, this is not too wild, but number 10, I want to spend one Bloomsday in Dublin. I was happy that I read Ulysses on the centenary. I read Ulysses in 2022, but I know that there are some kind of Bloomsday related things that happen here in Sydney, but I would love to just go, like if I was going to go to Dublin, I would just try and plan it just so that I could actually go during a Bloomsday, which is a little bit hard because it's kind of in the middle of a European summer, which is going to be pretty expensive, flying out from Australia, but don't really mind when that happens. But eventually in my life, I'd like to spend one Bloomsday in Dublin. And yeah, that's pretty much all of my literature goals. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.